Hey everyone, Kevin P. McAuliffe here for lowpost.com, and I'm back again with the next lesson in our Scratch Dailies tutorial series. And this lesson's all about color and lookup tables. We're going to talk about a standard lookup table workflow where you're applying lookup tables as sources and as creative LUTs. And then what we're going to do is we're going to give you a situation where you've been given clips that have multiple color spaces inside of one project, how you're going to deal with it, and things that are important to keep in mind as you're stepping through this often too common workflow. All right, and as you can see, we are at the main project selection window inside of Scratch 9.1. And this is actually a very pivotal moment, not only getting in and creating the new project, but deciding on how your workflow is going to go. And what I mean by that is we need to now decide whether we want to work with automated color management turned on or off. Now, what we're going to do to get rolling is we're going to talk about your typical dailies workflow, which is going to use color management turned off. So we're not going to have any color management, any automatic color management. I'm going to talk about that in the second half of this tutorial because, like I said, the typical dailies workflow is to use lookup tables when working with your footage. Now, to do this, we're actually going to need to disable color management. Let's head into our system settings to the advanced tab. I'm just going to come to the search dialog box. I'm going to type in color, and you'll see that color management disable is actually turned on already, which is good. This is what we want for our dailies workflow. I'm going to say, okay, let's create a new project. I'm going to call this color and LUTs CM disabled. Okay, we're going to create that project. We're just going to make sure that we are all good to go here. I'm just going to set my default data output to be Rec 709. Gamma 2.4 is fine. Let's say OK, and let's enter this project. Now we are, of course, going to need some media to work with. Let's say import, head to our bookmarks, to our Scratch Dailies, to our video folder. And before I take these clips and import them, I do want to point out something that's very important in the lower right-hand corner of the Import Clips window, and that is the project metadata defaults. Now, right now, you'll see that our color space is set to sRGB with a gamma of 2.2. Now, to be perfectly honest, at this point, when we're dealing with color management turned off, this is actually really irrelevant because we're going to be using lookup tables to override any color space that might be flagged on the clip. Because remember, we're not using any automated color management, so it really doesn't matter what this is set to, but I am going to set it to be correct for the footage that we are working with. So I'm going to set this to be Alexa wide gamut. I'm going to come in here to my ARRI log C. We'll select our 4 clips. I'll say open. I'll say yes so that the timeline matches the aspect of the clips, and I'm going to drop them into their slots. Now, if I head on over to the edit module, you'll see these clips look very washed out. They are in log color space, which is good. Everything is the way that I expect it to look. Let's head back to the construct window for just 1 second, and let's head into the media browser to the grades tab. Now, we talked briefly about this in a previous lesson, and I just want to get in and just reiterate and just expand on this a little bit. Now, we were talking about source LUTs versus grading LUTs and what the difference is between the two of them. Well, a source LUT is a technical LUT, meaning a conversion LUT from log C to Rec 709, Rec 709 to XYZ, and other, like I said, technical LUTs like that. A grading LUT is a stylistic LUT. Maybe you're going for the Walking Dead look, the Schindler's List look, or the Saving Private Ryan look. So to get in and apply the LUTs, we can do this one of a couple ways. For the source LUT, what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply it right here from within our media browser. What we're going to do is we're going to navigate right down here to load or match a LUT. I'm going to select load. We're going to head to the desktop, and what I'd like to do is a log C to Rec 709 color space conversion. I'm going to say open, and as soon as I apply that LUT, you'll notice it appears here in the source LUT, and also our thumbnail down here in the lower left-hand corner has been updated. Now if I say OK, I come back to the edit module, you'll see our footage is looking pretty darn good and in the correct color space. Now, we do have a few issues going on here. Okay, we're going to want to get in and adjust the framing of our shot. Now, I'd already gotten in and set my timeline up as a 2048 by 858, 23976 frame per second timeline. What I'm actually going to do here is come down to my output settings. I'm just going to change this to be 1080, 2398. Everything else is good to go, 23976, perfect. Let's come back to the edit module. Let's now check things out and see what's going on here. Now, to be honest, up until this point when dealing with the canvas, everything's been kind of I guess the easiest way to put it is more like a gray area. I really don't know exactly what is happening with my frame. I can see that things are grayed out a little bit here on the left and the right, but I can't actually get a good idea of what's going on with the frame and where our actual HD frame is happening. So let's talk a little bit about that. What I am going to do is I'm actually going to come to my settings right here. I'm going to come to guides, and if you take a look inside of guides, we actually don't want the guides, we want the border. As soon as I select the border, you'll now see I can see my HD border right here. Now, you'll notice that something's going on here because my 2048 by 858 footage is actually sitting outside of the frame. Keep in mind, when we make that adjustment from 2048 to 1920, all that's happening is that the image is being cropped. There's no actual scaling that's taking place. We're going to need to get in and do that scaling manually. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to head back out of my settings, back to the timeline. And you'll notice that inside of my timeline settings, when we are on our dailies/CDL workspace, is I have an option called framing. I'm going to select framing, and what I'd like to do is to get in and adjust the framing of all of these clips so that we take the width of our shot and we scale it down to be basically at the edge of our 1920 by 1080 frame size. Couple ways we can do this. We can do it one at a time, which is really not how I want to do it. I can punch in the value manually, or what we can do is we can say all. What we're going to do is we're going to take this technique or this task and apply it to all of the clips that are in our timeline. And what we're going to do is adjust our scaling. Now you'll see we can do a couple things here. If I wanted to, and for example, if on set they had matted the frame so that we weren't dealing with what's going on outside of the frame, what we could do is we could fit this to height. Now you'll see that all of this information outside of the frame is cropped out, but now the image is going to fit fully inside of a 1920 by 1080 frame size. Now for us, that's not really what we want to do. We want to go with the letterbox look, which is fine. We're just going to fit to width, and you'll see that we now have the letterbox at the top and the bottom. Now let's talk a little bit about some other things that are going on in here as well. We do have the ability, once we have gotten in and done any framing adjustments that we want to get in and do, I'm just going to head back here for 1 second to our color effects module. Now, because we are in a specific workspace, we're in our daily CDL workspace, we have a different set of tools than we have when working in the full work set now, or full workspace. Now, if I come to the full and finished workspace, you'll notice that using our primary or even our balance as an example, you'll notice that inside of the primary, when we're taking a look at our wheels, we have our very common lift, gamma, and gain color wheels to work with. Now, if I head back to our dailies/CDL workflow, you'll notice that these tools have now changed. They are now offset, power, slope, and over here on the right, saturation. We're now no longer dealing with our full tool set. We're dealing with a color decision list tool set that we can now get in and start making adjustments to. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to jump into my favorite, which is balance. I'm just going to make a little bit of a balance change here because I want to show you something else here. Let's just make this a little bit more red, say maybe a little bit more like the Wild West, maybe to about there. Now what we have the ability to do inside of Scratch as well, once we get in and start adding our different grades, our color correction adjustments and things like that, is we can now take this information and copy and paste it to other shots. Now if you take a look over here on the right hand side, we have the copy parameter right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy the values that I've punched in here. I'm just going to jump to the previous shot, and what I'm going to do is just paste it in. Now you'll see as soon as I hit paste, we have a whole bunch of options in here. Now I'm just going to leave everything selected because I've only made a minor adjustment. I'm simply going to say paste, and there is the adjustment that I have made. Now, where things get really interesting is that, let's say hypothetically I had come in and done this to the first shot. Let's just say paste, we'll just say paste, and everything's good to go. Well, let's say now what I wanted to do was I wanted to take what I had done here and I wanted to paste those values down my timeline to every other shot. Well, you'll notice that if I come back into paste, not only do we have the ability to paste, including layers, framing, animations, curves, and grades, what we can do is take that information and paste it forward down the timeline. And if we only wanted it to be a very specific range, we can actually mark an out point, and Scratch will only paste that information or those parameters down to the out point and no further. Very, very cool. Okay. Now, to be honest, I'm not going to get in and show you how to apply a stylistic LUT. You've already seen me do it when I was getting in and applying the technical LUT. The technique is exactly the same. We can actually do it from right here, from within the color effects module. We can load it up, apply it to the shot, and it will be all set to go. What I want to do now is I want to switch over and talk about automated color management and how this workflow is going to work. Now, I'm going to be using some different footage for this. So what we're going to do is we're going to close this project. We're going to head back to our system settings. I'm going to come back to the advanced tab. I'm just going to type in color. We're going to disable color management here. We're going to turn that off. I'm going to say OK. And we're now going to get in and create a new project. So let's head on down here, click on new to create a new project. We're going to call this color and LUTs, and we're going to call it CM for color management. We will create that project. I'm going to change the color space to Rec 709. Gamma 2.4 is fine for the purposes of what we're doing. I'll set the timeline to be 1080-2398. And now let's come down and say OK. We're now going to enter this project. Now I'm going to select import clips, and I'm going to head to the desktop for our clips because I have 3 clips on the desktop that we're going to be bringing in. Now here's where things get exceptionally important for you to pay attention to what's happening. I'm going to select these 3 clips, and what I've intentionally done is I've actually tagged them with their color space, log C, Rec 709, XYZ. The goal of this is to output them all as Rec 709 with no lookup tables needing to be applied to them, straight through from import to output. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to need to do is to make an assumption. I'm going to assume that none of these clips have their metadata tagged to them that's actually going to tell Scratch what the color space of these clips is. So we're going to tell Scratch that by default, what we want to do is we want to have these as Rec 709, we'll say 2.4. Okay, so what's going to happen is that any clip that's brought in that doesn't have metadata information tagged to it is going to be tagged as that. Now don't worry, much like everything else in Scratch, we can change that metadata after the fact. What we're going to do is we're going to come down and we're going to say open. Now keep in mind, before I even do that, if I want, I can actually come in and set the scaling to be fit to width if I want, because I know that these are actually all different sizes. So let's actually do that so that they all fit within an HD frame size exactly the way that we're going to need them to. Now you'll see the clips we're loading have a different resolution or frame rate. Do I want to update the timeline? I'm going to say no, and we're going to drop these clips in. Now XYZ, log C, Rec 709. If you notice, if I come to the edit module, let's just zoom back so we can fit this in the frame, you'll see looks pretty washed out, looks pretty washed out, looks pretty normal. Okay, now what I think I'm going to do with this clip here is we're going to adjust the framing to have it fit to the height. So this way everything fills the frame. Now you'll notice this clip here doesn't quite fit, so we'll fit it to height. So now everything looks good. Now what I'm also going to do here, just to make my life a little bit easier here, is I'm just going to shorten this shot up because it's pretty long. Now what's also great is that you'll notice here that I actually have all this extraneous information that I now don't need. So at any point what we can do is we can simply head into our settings, head to the guides, and we can actually crop all that information out so that we don't have to see it if we don't want to. Okay? So now let's talk about the metadata for these clips. I'm just going to turn the settings off for a second. We can do this from whatever window we want. Now I'm just going to stick within the edit module here, and we're going to head to our metadata. Now I'm going to head back to the first clip that I know has an XYZ color space, and what we're going to do is we're going to set the color space to be just that, XYZ. So let's come over here to the color. I'm going to drop that down, and I'm simply going to switch it to XYZ. Now you're going to notice immediately that this clip now looks correct. Now why would the clip suddenly look correct when I change it to XYZ? Well, don't worry, we'll get to that in just a second. So I know that the next clip is log C, so it's log color space. So let's come into color, let's come to our Alexa wide gamut, let's come down here. We want to switch this to log C. Shot's already looking much better. Now it could look a little bit more, have a little bit more depth with it, a little bit more blacks in the, sort of in the darker areas, but I'm fine with this for now. Last shot looks perfectly fine. I'm going to leave it the way it is. Okay, so what exactly is going on here? Well, there's something else when working with automated color management that I need to bring your attention to, and that's this little button here that says MON. Okay, I'm going to turn that off. And as soon as I turn that off, you're going to notice that everything goes right back the way that it was before. Okay? Washed out, looking good. So what is going on when I turn monitor on? Well, it says toggle the display LUT on and off. Well, what the heck does that mean? Well, what that means, and you'll see that this shot is gamma 2.4, so let's keep that in mind. What we're now going to do is we're going to come to our settings, okay? And instead of looking at the guides, I'm going to look at the monitor. What we actually have going on here is a LUT applied to our monitor. So once we get the color space of all of our shots correct the way that they should be, we can then tell Scratch to apply a lookup table to those shots to actually switch them to the color space that we want to see. Now, sRGB is not what I want to see. Rec. 709 2.4 is what I want to see. Now, I know that this LUT, this interface monitor LUT, matches the color information that I applied to this shot because I can see it over here in the metadata information. So now when I toggle that monitor on and off, nothing happens. This shot looks exactly the way that it should. Now what's actually very cool about this whole process is that this actually looks all the way that it should. And I know this because if I turn the monitor off, I can now see exactly the way the shots looked before. So what I can now do is say, oh, okay, well, looking at this in Rec. 709, maybe I need to get in, add a little bit of more color information, get in, do a little bit of adjustments before I actually take these clips and export them for whatever I need them exported as. Now, this is all fine and good except for one problem. This is all working contained within my timeline, but at some point we're going to need to output. Now, when I say output, there's a couple ways that we can talk about outputting this. Let's say hypothetically I'm actually working in a situation where I have somebody bringing me cards immediately and I have the director or producer that wants to project this in a theater up onto the screen. Well, I also have the ability right from here to not only get in and adjust the lookup table of my monitor, but I can actually also get in, and if I have an SDI out going out of my system to an external display, projector, whatever, apply a completely separate color space to that. So that maybe it's XYZ, maybe it's P3, maybe it's who knows what, but you can now start getting in and setting up different color spaces inside of Scratch for the monitor and for an external source so that you can have all of these set up to look correct. Now, you can even take a look here. We could even import our own LUT file in here for the interface monitor if we wanted to, as well as for the display. All right, let's head to the render module. Let me just draw your attention down here to the data format in the lower right-hand corner. You'll see that what we've now done is we've unified all of our color spaces to output them as Rec. 709. But as we know, it's never just one output that we have to do. Inevitably, we might have to do multiple outputs. This is where we're going to need to get in and add a color converter node. Now you'll see that with the color space converter option that we have here, what we can now do is simply come in and at any point if we want to get in and make some adjustments, you'll see there's the import information, there's the output information, and we can now get in, set these parameters what we need them to be, and have a start to finish workflow with no lookup tables required, converting from multiple color spaces to one color space. And to be honest, I'd get in and show you how the render module works, but we're going to save that for our lesson on rendering and exporting. All right, now as always, if you have any questions, you have any comments or ideas for upcoming lessons or courses, I want you to head on over and post them in our forums at lowpost.com/forums. And if you have any questions for me, you can always send them to kevinpmcauliffe@gmail.com.